The fried liver is an opening that is often regarded as unsound or trappy, but the truth is this opening has just as much reputability and bite as any other opening out there, especially with a new unknown move where as early as move 9 you can throw your opponent completely off guard. Let's explore it. Now, the fried liver, of course, is e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, and knight g5. Now, the truth is, if you've been playing chess for even just a little bit, you've probably already come across this opening, and you've probably already come across a video that explains this opening in great detail because it's very popular, and many beginners are, at some point in their beginning career run across this opening. However, what we're going to do today is not repeat the main lines that you probably already know, but instead look at an option that you have as white, the ability to employ, that will give you a very interesting advantage, at least in the comfort of the position, because you're going to know this better than your opponent, and that I can almost guarantee. Now, the first thing I want to mention, of course, is that d5 here is a necessity. The pressure on f7 is too much. The only way to break that is by sacrificing a pawn. This is a sacrifice. They cannot take it back because of the various options here, either d4 or knight f7. Again, these are main traps that you probably already know. If you don't, then feel free to find another video that explains sort of the basics of the fried liver, or just run with the engine with this. I mean, d4 is a move here, knight f7. The point is this diagonal is super weak, and you can take advantage of that. What I want to take a look at is solely the kind of new move that you probably did not see. So knight a5 is the main move. Bishop b5 check, c6, takes, bishop d3. And here, after the move knight d5, the only move that is kind of very typical is knight f3. Right? You're going to retreat the knight, and then you want a castle. You want to bring out your knight. At some point, you move the bishop. You go for d3. You open up your bishop. And these are very typical positions, very well explored. You probably know these. It's possible that you play a different variation like bishop e2 or maybe queen f3 or some other variation in this position. But within the bishop d3 line, knight f3 is the follow-up. But what we're going to do here is explore rather a second move, which is h4. So again, as a recap, we're going to look in great detail on this move h4, but let's quickly just get how we got to that move. So we play the fried liver, they go d5, we take, they're going to move their knight, attack our bishop, we're going to give this check to force them to ruin their pawn structure, and now we drop the bishop back. Now they're going to create this discovered attack on the knight. This is almost always played, and here h4. Okay, so what's the idea? What's the point? How do we continue? Well, the point is that we solidify the knight, right? Rather than essentially looking at the knight as a weakness here that's being attacked and kind of scared in that regard and move the knight back to safety, we're going to just defend the knight, keep it there as a strong post where it offers very good attacking chances both against f7 and h7. So the immediate threat is in fact just bishop takes h7, right? If they ignore that, let's say they go bishop d7, we're going to take, and we're going to thank them for the extra pawn. Now, in these positions, very often what they can try to do is to remove the knight and therefore try to attack the bishop, but that's not going to work and it's too slow. Here, for example, we can, in theory, already move the bishop back, although then there's going to be an issue with the knight hanging. What we do here instead is we bring out the queen. Right now, there's pressure on this pawn. They can't do that. They can't do anything aside from really taking, but after they take, we're going to take back. The bishop is well guarded, and it's very difficult to play this from this point, right? If they play the move rook b8, for example, we can now solidify the bishop in f6, and the light squares are just too weak. We can castle, eventually take out our pieces, right? We're going to stack rooks on the open d file, and we're going to go from there. The king is going to be forever stranded in the center. The light squares are forever weak. This is kind of one thing that I'd urge you to kind of get into your brain, this idea of taking control of the light squares if they allow you to take on h7. They're not going to allow you to take on h7 on that note. They're going to play the move bishop e7, and instead they're going to say, if you take on h7, we're going to be able to chop off the legs of the bishop by taking the knight here. And so we're not going to take on h7. Instead, what we are going to do is bring out our queen. And here there's now a plethora of different ideas. Of course, the very urgent thing that they have to respond to is queen takes f7. There's still ideas looming in the air of like bishop takes h7, or maybe knight takes h7, or knight takes f7. The point is, there's a lot of things that they now have to take into consideration. So from here, there's two moves that we're going to explore. The first one is f5. This is the main move. They're trying to, at the same time, sever the connection of the queen to the f7 square and sever the connection of the bishop to the h7 square, kind of cutting the sight of both of our main light square attackers. This is quite logical, but the one downside, of course, is that it greatly weakens this diagonal and it gives us a pawn. So we're going to take that pawn and thank them. Now what they're going to do is play rook f8 and claim that they're getting some initiative. And indeed they are. But what we go here is queen to h5 check, and after g6, they're forking our pieces. We're going to sack that piece. This is the type of opening that you can choose to play, a very aggressive, sharp move. And if you're playing the fried liver, frankly, you've already kind of made that decision. So tactics are definitely in the cards here. And after queen takes g6, the king, of course, is greatly exposed. It has to run over to the queen side. And in this position, the move that I'm recommending is d3. Right? This is very much a staple position that you're largely going to get in many of your positions, and d3 is a way to open up the bishop and at some point maybe open up the knight to the light squares. You can always play the knight to c3. Let's look at two games to see how this could proceed. So in the first game, we're going to look at what happens if they just run with their king, right? They're trying to come as close to safety. So queen e4, centralizing the queen, developing pieces, so far logical. Rook to c1, developing more pieces. Note the king is on c7. That could be something in the future to look at. Knight to c5, queen to c4, bishop a6, and here comes a spectacular move, queen to b4. You might be wondering, wait a minute, why can you not take the knight? Well, of course, the idea is knight d3, and oh no, the queen seems to be lost. But you have to look forward a couple more moves. And in this position, when the king is so greatly exposed, there's always going to be tactics, right? Ideas of like knight b5. This is why the rook is justified on the c file. But of course, much more strong. You're going to win back the queen with this fork on e6. And from this position, you're just much better standing because, again, the rook is better developed. You have a few more pieces, a couple more pawns. These pawns, for example, very dangerous. And overall, you're doing quite well. Now, they can take back this pawn, but again, their king is very weak. The knight has a nice, fantastic outpost on c5. And what you're going to see very smoothly is that white is able to convert this position. If they were to take, there would have been issues with this check. So instead, they're trying to pose some other issues, maybe on the g2 square. But, very quickly, white is able to take control. And indeed, in fact, black resigns here because their position is in complete shambles. So this was one approach that black tried, which is just running the king over as quickly as possible. A second approach is this move rook f6, playing a bit more aggressively, hitting the queen. The queen again centralizes, and you're going to see some very common themes, right? We see castles, we see similar development schemes, the knight in this case coming over to e4, as opposed to staying more so on the queen side, but the basic ideas are the same. You develop your pieces, and you try as quickly as possible to pose some problems to the exposed king, and indeed, after queen takes e5, white's already winning. I mean, the truth is, white is already just much stronger. Queen to g7, and here there was actually a nice opportunity that was missed, which was knight takes bishop, give away the queen, but you're going to win back the rook. Instead, queen moved away, still winning, and many times in these positions you have many approaches to win. c5 here is kind of that last move that guarantees a winning position for white. So rook to f8, bishop g5, and many more moves were played, but ultimately black ended up resigning. Now, I want to say that the specific moves that you see here are not the takeaway that I want you to have from this video. but more so the general ideas, which is that you sacrifice this bishop from a theoretical standpoint, and then what you do after that is you quickly play d3 and develop your pieces in some way to take control of more central squares. You're going to castle, you're going to bring your rook onto one of the files that has potential to open up, like the c file, and from there you often get very good chances to win quickly. So f5, this was the first move I wanted to look at. Let's look at the second move, which is taking the knight. This is also common, just getting rid of the strong piece here. And against this move, what I'd recommend you do is to just take back. They're going to win the pawn, okay, but here, rook h5, and we're going to get very quick play for that pawn. Queen g3. There's a threat of taking the pawn here, there's a threat of taking the pawn here. f6, but now rook takes h7. We won back the material with interest because the light squares are greatly weakened. So queen g6, for example, right? And again, the king is just running, and it doesn't have great squares to go to. Now, one of the things you'll see here is that the c file again opens up. So that's another theme that you can see, again, reinforcing that idea that you want the rook on the c1 square. And very quickly, white manages to open up the position further. There's pressure on the c6 square. The queen can always try to come back into the game in one way or another. And it is white who has complete control over the position. The queen comes back. The queen comes to c3. There's, various different ideas. The pawn is weak, and the dark squares are very weak as well. And after b4, and queen takes c6, is a pretty nice way to finish. I mean, let's be honest. Obviously, after bishop takes, rook takes is checkmate. Just to clarify, this is not a game of beginners. These are two grandmasters playing, and this spectacular finish was possible largely because of the tactical complications which define this opening after the move h4. And so this is where I'm going to kind of conclude the video. If you have any questions about this system, let me know, because this is a quite brief introduction, but the general ideas to kind of recap are the following. We're going to play the main moves, bishop d3, but then h4, and our idea is to attack quickly and to complicate the position quickly. So queen f3 is one of the main points. We also have the threat of just taking the pawn, so bishop e7 is very much needed, but after queen f3, there's two moves to look at, f5, and bishop takes g5. I'd recommend, if you want to really use this system, maybe look at a couple more games from these, but the general ideas that we looked at do stand, which is that after f5, we're going to get a fun piece sacrifice in this position where we're going to open up our pieces, develop, and then attack the exposed centralized queen. And alternatively, after the move bishop takes g5, we get similar situations where the rook is open, the bishop is open, the queen is open, and that is very much a recipe for disaster for the opponent, right? So rook h5 here, and then queen to g3, and we're quickly attacking. We're going to win back the pawn. That's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about doing far more damage than that and just going for checkmate as quickly as possible. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I assume many of you would not be familiar with this setup, and so hopefully this maybe brought some new life into this otherwise very much explored system, the fried liver attack. And if that is something that indeed you enjoyed, then make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.